Hi Bookflowers! It's Kristen from Perks of a Bookflower, and today I am so excited to be sharing with you my favorite books that I've read this year. I've read about 60 books at this point. I know, kind of crazy, but out of them I have a list of about 12 or 13 that have really stuck with me. Ones that I keep thinking about, ones that I just find to be really intriguing, and ones that I gave either 5 or 4 stars to. So today I'm just going to share the best books that I have read so far this year. A lot of them are backlists, but some of them are new releases. I'll be doing a video where I talk about the best new releases I've read this year later on, so look out for that later. But for right now, let's hop into the best books I have read in 2020. To start off, I want to share the best adult fiction novels that I read in 2020, and I have 2. And the first one we're talking about is Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore by Robin Sloan. This book, literally, I read it in less than 24 hours and I couldn't stop reading. It was a book that just gripped me from beginning to end for lots of reasons. So Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore follows our main character during the recession in the United States, where he gets a job at Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore, and then discovers that it's not exactly what it seems. There are these strange books written in code up on the top shelf, and it's kind of about uncovering what this code means, while also you learn a lot about things like fonts, graphic design. I felt so educated. I learned so many interesting things about Google while reading this book, and also just the writing style overall was so nicely done. It was fresh and written with so much voice. It's almost difficult to pinpoint, but the voice was just unique. The content was unique. And overall, I thought this book was unlike anything I had read, and I can't wait to read another Robin Sloan book soon. I gave it 5 stars. It was great. The next amazing book that I read this year was Every Hearted Doorway by Shauna McGuire. I know I'm a little late to reading this book, but it basically follows these children who return from magical worlds like Narnia, and they're trying to cope with the real world now because they miss their old land and they really feel like they belong in these Narnia type worlds, and so they're dealing with homesickness and sadness. It's written very atmospherically, and also it's so macabre and dark. It's a darkly beautiful story, I suppose, with a lot of sorrow at its heart. And I just found it really unique again and really refreshing. The premise and the writing style were chef's kiss beautiful. So I gave it 4 stars, but really enjoyed it and want to continue on with the series. Alright, so moving on, we are now going to be talking about the best historical fiction books I read in 2020. We all know historical fiction is one of my most beloved genres, and I was so happy to find that the best historical fiction books I've read so far this year have been ARCs. It's not what I expected, so we have some really amazing historical fiction books that we're going to be kind of coming out soon. So the first one to get started off with is The Book of Lost Names by Kristen Harmel. This book brought me to catharsis, which in my opinion is the sign of the perfect book, meaning that I ugly cried for the last 20% of the book, and once I was finished, I felt like a new woman. Yes. That's what this book did to me. The synopsis of the story is basically that we are following a young girl in France during the German occupation in World War II, as she has to kind of leave with her mother, and then how she gets involved in a forgery operation in the French resistance that helps lots of children and adults escape from France into Switzerland to safety. So it does have a lot of Nightingale vibes, and overall it was so fun. I will tell you, when I first started the book, I did not think that it was going to be so great. It kind of read to me more like a commercial romance novel with like historical elements, and I was like, oh darn. But then I got to the last 20% and there was the ending and everything came together so beautifully. I have been so disappointed with endings in books lately, but I honestly feel like this author did it in such a way that like I want to just be like, go to other authors and be like, hey, end your books this way. This was amazing. So yeah, this book made me so excited. The romance Oh, so good. And I learned so much about forgery, and overall, I just adore this book. So yes, The Book of Lost Names, 5-star read, probably one of the best historical fiction novels I read. But then there are more. So I also read The Paris Hours by Alex George as an ARC from NetGalley, and loved it so much too. So this is a literary historical fiction novel that takes place over the course of 24 hours in Paris. You follow multiple different characters' points of views as they're all trying to look for something that's been lost, and then they come together in this like dramatic ending. And you learned so much about the expatriates who are living in Paris. Like Hemingway is in the book, Proust is in the book, and my little English major soul was just geeking out and nerding so much. And the writing style, oh my goodness. I'm of course going to have quotes that show it to you, but I just felt like I was consuming the most beautiful, perfectly crafted art, and I really think that everyone needs to read this story. The next historical fiction book that I read and loved so much was the Jane Austen Society. This book was the perfect read for a Jane Austen lover like me. It was also my very first experience with NetGalley, and it did not let me down. The Jane Austen Society gives similar vibes to the Gransey Literary and Potato Pill Pie Society in the fact that it follows a ragtag group of individuals in Chawton, England, who band together over their shared love of Jane Austen and their desire to save her final home from being destroyed by a golf company. It's a love letter to literature, it's a love letter to Jane Austen and books in general, and it's also written in the style of a Jane Austen novel with lots of Jane Austen quotes and stories thrown in, and it just made my Jane Austen heart so happy. Thought it was written so nicely, and the only thing I didn't love was the ending, which seemed to be a little too rushed. But yeah, overall I gave it 4 stars and really enjoyed it, and definitely would consider it in one of the best books that I've read this year. Alright, so now we are moving into the YA category. Let's go ahead and hop into it. And the first one is Geekerella by Ashley Poston. I've already raved so much about this book, but I'm fine with doing it again. This story follows a girl named Elle who is obsessed with a fandom that is similar to Star Trek called Starfield. And then Elle has the opportunity to enter a cosplay contest at a convention and has a lot of struggles along the way to enter it. Mainly the fact that she has an evil stepmother. Yes, this is also a retelling of the Cinderella story. This story is a love letter to fandoms and geeky, nerdish people. The romance is really nicely done, and overall it was fun, but still like very impactful. And I just felt seen as a person who is such a huge part of the Harry Potter fandom that it was wonderful. It made my heart so happy. And I gave it 5 stars because it was also really well written, and I thought the story was great. It's everything, in my opinion, that a YA contemporary novel should be. And as someone who reads so much contemporary, I think that says a lot about it. The next YA contemporary that I read and loved was Tweet Cute by Emma Lord. This story, I knew it was going to be sweet and funny. I did not know it was going to be so secretly deep and hard-hitting, but it is. It's both. And that's what I really love. So Tweet Cute follows the story of Pepper and Jack, who incidentally are both lovers and rivals without realizing it. Pepper and Jack's family both own restaurants, and they get into a bit of a fight on Twitter over a grilled cheese recipe. So Pepper's family is like a big fast food company, and Jack thinks that Pepper's family has stolen their grilled cheese recipe. So yeah, normally with a story that's so light and funny seeming, I expect the writing to be light too, but it wasn't. The style was very prosaic and lush, and I just overall thought this book was wonderful, and I definitely want more people to read it. So yes, Tweet Cute by Emma Lord, one of the best books I read this year. hands down. All right, you know I love me some middle grade. I have middle grade books that I read and loved this year. They kind of came out of the blue and surprised me with their wonder. So the first one is Planet Earth is Blue by Nicole Pantalikos. This story follows a little girl named Nova who has autism and really a difficult time. She is in foster care currently, has no idea where her sister is, and is about to start a new school in middle school, and she's not happy. So the story follows Nova as she starts this new school and starts living with her foster family, and there's also this plot line going on at the same time where the Challenger is about to launch, and Nova is obsessed with space. She has her little space teddy that she loves so much, and this is one of the hardest hitting contemporary middle grade novels I have ever read. It is also so beautiful, and even though Nova is not able to speak verbally, she is able to write. And so the narrative is framed in which you get a slice of Nova's life as she's adjusting to all of this, and also then a slice from like a diary entry where she is explaining her feelings and what she's going through, and it's so sad but so beautiful, and I'm so happy it exists and thinks that everyone should read it. Oh man, I honestly need everyone to talk about this book. The next middle grade book that I read and loved was a graphic novel. We are talking about All's Fair in Middle School, and man, this book was a trip. Written by Victoria Jameson, the same author of Roller Girl, All's Fair in Middle School is a book that follows our main character as she goes from working in a Renaissance fair to starting middle school and kind of dealing with her life. It's a lot about being comfortable with who you are, a little bit of coming of age, and also deals a lot with like the importance of found family, you know? I love each of the chapter headings. They're done in this like medieval style, and then Victoria Jameson's art is just so fun. I loved the Renaissance elements in it, and I also just thought it had such an important message about just being okay with who you are and not trying to fit in or follow the other trends. If you're quirky, own it, let your freak flag fly, all of that. I feel it's so important for middle schoolers to know this. As a middle school teacher, I see them constantly trying to shift who they are to fit some idea of what they think they should be. And I just want every middle schooler to read this book and look like, hey, you just be you, and that's all that matters. And it was fun. It made me laugh. I like it better than Roller Girl, honestly. I thought it was more impactful, and yeah, I'm so happy I read it. The final middle grade story that I read and loved is one that kind of came out of the blue. I'm talking about Small Spaces by Katherine Arden, the same author who wrote The Bear and the Nightingale. Did you know she had a middle grade horror novel? If you didn't, now you do. And man, it was good. Really, I loved it. It follows the story of a girl named Ollie. She's 11 years old, and she finds an interesting book. Well, actually, it's thrown at her. And she goes on this school field trip to a cornfield, and then things start happening. Scarecrows come to life and start trying to take her friends. There's a villainous smiling man, and overall it was just very spooky and very fast-paced. The level of conflict and the way that the story is written, in which each chapter kind of ends on a cliffhanger, reminded me a lot of an R.L. Stine book, but kind of like R.L. Stine for the modern age, I suppose. And overall, this book was amazing. It was a little bit more like poetic and dense, I think, than an R.L. Stine book, which I also enjoyed, and still read it in probably just a couple of hours. And so I really enjoyed it. I am impressed that Katherine Arden can write such varying styles, and I hope that she writes another. In fact, I think that there is a sequel planned. I gave this 5 stars. I thought it kind of exemplified everything I think that a little middle grade horror novel should, and I loved it. And there you have it. Those are the best books that I have read so far in 2020. There are about 7 months left of the year, so I'm sure I'm going to be reading some more really amazing books. But yeah, that's what I've left now. So if you like this video, be sure that you hit the like button. In the comments below, let me know what is the best book that you have read in 2020 so far. Also, if you've read any of these books, let me know what your thoughts on them were. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure that you hit the subscribe button. I post new videos every Wednesday and Saturday. And also, if you would like to try out Scribd, I have a link in the description box below where you can get your first 2 months free, which is more than what you can get just going on the website by itself. But yeah, that is going to be it for now, Bookflowers. Thanks for stopping by. Bye.